Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to present my work in front of you. I'm really happy to do it. Thank you. I'm really happy to participate to this across international conference. And thank you very much for all those organizers for Ruse and Craiova. And thank you very much. So I will go to the point. Um, this is a part of my work with on the relationship between the visual self-representation um, and French far-right activists. My method is through direct observation and interviews. I infiltrate a far-right organization in 2015, 2016. It was the monarchist organization Action Française, and I conduct direct observation and interview with activists and also with activists of several organizations, identitarian, national revolutionary activists from the GUD, Group Union Défense. So let's enter in the subject, the visual self-representation. There is three key dimensions in the self-representation through iconography in the far right. The first of it is, and the more obvious, is heroization of the self or themselves through mythologized figure from the past and mythologized role model from the past. Um, they are different for each organization. For example, for the identitarians, they will be really interested in Spartan figure, Hellenistic figure, like Europeist and pagan figure. The monarchist organization and the nationalist organization will be more interested in chivalry figure, in Templar figure. But the common point, there is also variation, and each group try to shape their militants following different role model with their own value. But the common point is in all these organizations that I call radical far right, there is this role model and heroization of the past, heroization of the self, because they associate themselves with this image from mythologized past. Okay. But there is another point, paradoxal. It's through the meme culture, there is a self-derision dimension. And the meme culture takes all this iconography and turn it into self-derision. So there is, in a way, in a hand, heroization, and in the other hand, self-derision. So this is paradoxal, and this is, I think, interesting. The next point is political individuation. Through this reference, the far-right activists distinguish themselves from socially in their social field, but from the collective ideology of their organization. So this is the last point I will go through. But first, I think it's interesting to go through a brief history of the French far-right self-representation, who begins before the meme, who begins before the internet, who begins, of course, before 1968, but I can't do all the story of the French far-right, so I decided to begin with an organization called the GRES. GRES stands for Groupe de recherche et d'études sur la civilisation européenne. So it's a group and it's research center of the European civilization, something like that. They are also called New Right, and their approach, the political strategy, is called meta-political. Because they aim to influence society not by direct activism, but by creating cultural reference. They are in a pseudo-academical approach. They are conducting reviews, doing colloquium, and they are theorizing this role model system inspired by the past. So they are mythologizing some part of the past, and that is interesting is they are more in a pagan and Europeist perspective, with fairly new from the other nationalists, French nationalists of this time, who were more in a Catholic approach and in a French nationalist approach. And these pagan and Europeist referents are often martial. For example, they are not really interesting in the city of Athens from the Greece, they are interesting from Sparta. But let's go through. We need to continue because, as you understand, I am interested in youth and contemporary approach. And we are now in the beginning of the 90s with a review like Lutte du Peuple. So Lutte du Peuple is the fight of the people. This is a national revolutionary review. It was the mainstream approach of the far right. I'm not said it, but at this time that was the radical far right in France was in this approach. So as you can see, it's really youth oriented. It's skinhead inspired. You can see the boots, you can see the haircuts. It's in a popular approach, and there is explicit reference to the Greece, but critical reference. We are a bit. We are now in the end of the 90s, but this is the same people and the same ideology. This is from the FAQ section of the Unité Radicale website. So this is the group after Nouvelle Resistance. If you see, I put a little timeline of the groups Nouvelle Resistance and Jeune Resistance at the beginning of the 90s and Unité Radicale, and we will see after what happened. So we are in the Unité Radicale website, and so if you remember in the website at this time, there was really often a question and answer section where they were explaining their view in the about section most of the time, and they're speaking about the cultural struggle. So cultural struggle in French, it's combat culturel. This is another name for the metapolitical approach for the Greece. And they are saying that sympathizers are more interesting in a CD, in a comics books, than in colloquism and intellectualism of the Grace Conference. And I think this is really interesting. They are really taking the idea of the metapolitical approach of the cultural struggle of the Greece, but in a critical way, saying that youth and cultural youth and popular approach is more effective. So let's continue. This is another image of the same style. We are between Nouvelle Résistance and Unité Radicale. You can see the skinhead style. You can see also that they are attacking America and Israel, which is interesting because you can see that it's another approach than the actual the current French far right. But let's continue. In 2002, Unité Radicale got forbidden because one of the sympathizers tries to kill Jacques Chirac, so the former president of the French Republics. So Unité Radicale was, of course, forbidden. And a new movement appeared, the Bloc Identitaire and the Jeunesse Identitaire. And I call all these mouvements identitaires because it's simple. It's simplest. And this movement identitaire, so this was people from Nouvelle Résistance and Unité Radicale, but with change, ideological change, totally modernized the design of the Unité Radicale and Nouvelle Résistance. For example, you can see that the skinheads reference totally disappeared. But you can also see there is pop culture reference. If you can see, this is Brad Pitt, but it is a really special Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt from Fight Club. So Fight Club, a really popular movie of the 90s, was still popular 20 years after. And this was a big point of the identitarian. They was continuing the metapolitical approach of the Greys, trying to spread their value to role model, but they was trying to be more normal, less violent in their propaganda, and really more with an aesthetic really more polished. Let's continue. This is a book from Philippe Vardon. Philippe Vardon was an activist from Unité Radicale. He is in one of the leaders of the identitarian movement. He is in a music band who was a skinhead past of the time. His name was Fraction Hexagone. Now it's Fraction. You can see there is a Spartian reference from the Grace, of course, but also from the movie 300 from Zack Snyder. And this is the title, Element for Identitarian Subculture. It is a reference to the Greece review, which is Element for Civilization European, an European civilization. So they take the same idea of the Greys, but they put it in a youth and subcultural approach, and this will have a big influence on the other far right groups. So this is one of the main influence of the modern iconography of the far right, the work that did the identitarian in the end of the years 2000, but it's begin earlier, as we have seen it. The other big influence is the meme culture who come from America and was spread during the first Trump campaign in 2016. And we will say now, what is a meme? A meme is a cultural reference shared online. It's often declined into humorous variation, and most of the time using an image. And the interesting point is everybody can do his own meme. Um, the far right memes appears on the social media platform such as 4chan in the early 2000s, and since the beginning it was racist, misogynistic, and they were representing positively far-right activists and the golden age that are interesting for the new right perspective. But the interesting point is they also mock the gap between the real life and the glorious ideal, and they are reinterpreting the far-right role model with a critical distance. So this is interesting because we are in our compass, we in a hand an heroization of the past and an heroization of the past and heroization of the self and a self-derision. This is the tension between both to think in the process of self-representation. This is so there is a lot of far-right meme. So I will present the most known of it. It's Pepe the Frog. It's a frog, as you can imagine. It comes from a comic from Matt Fury, and he had to adapt because, as I said, you can adapt a meme to represent Trump, Roman soldiers, Templar, far-right activists. So this is the same idea of self-representation. He can dress himself as he wants, and I will show you. This is Roman centurion, Pepe the Frog. This is Trump activist, Pepe the Frog. And this is Odin, Pepe the Frog, with this far-right symbol you can see. So uh, is endorsing all the social role, but with, as you can see, always this smile, slightly mockers. So what is the social use of memes? They are shared on social medias by the activists, And at the time, I had a lot of far-right activists. At the time in 2015, it was on Facebook, so I have then my direct contact, and it was really interesting for me to see how they interact. And there were a lot sharing this kind of mail. That was interesting. It's in a way they were far-right activists from a specific organization. Most of them was from Action Française. And Action Française have his own doctrine, is really like this. It's a doctrine for a far-right group. It has been elaborated by Charles Maurras. The name is integralism nationalism. But when they were on the internet, they were taking a lot of distance and liberty from this doxa. They were using meme to, by humor, distinguish themselves ideologically and socially, and to position themselves on other debates that were not at all the nationalism integral debate. For example, this is a kind of debate you can see between far-right activists, French or not. This is, so as you can see, a Roman. This is their Celt, and they are arguing to see which is the best, Roman Empire or Celt barbary. And so it is interesting point is this is not an historical debate. This is a self-representation debate in a narcissist perspective. It's what does it mean? Um, for far-right activist who identify himself with some barbaric Celt mythologies past, this is the way of rumor he needs to prove by himself that he is strong and he deserves to be treated fairly, and he is opposing himself with uh, other far-right activists who are more interesting in Latin and I will say more Apollonisiac approach of the pagan. This is an anti-pagan debate between Celtic and the Roman pagan, true male, true Moor, but this is not a really religious debate. It is an identity debate. That is really the point I want to show. This is, so as you can see, one of the points to distinguish yourself with meme is through martial reference, which this really important question, who is the stronger? We are in a, I will say, capital warrior approach. But this is another way to distinguish yourself through meme uh, for far-right activists is through obscure reference. So we are more in a capital cultural approach. This is from a book, an auto-print book you can find on Amazon. You can find it on the PDF on the internet. This is the first card of the tarot, as you can see. So this is the magician, and this is specifically a telemist version of it, who is from Aleister Crowley, which is a guru, pop culture guru from the 20th century. And the name of the book is Esoteric Kekism Anew. The idea of esoteric, it's opposed to exoteric. This is the idea of an ideology who is from an inner circle and who is not broadly shared. And the idea of esoteric, so kekism is another, kek is another word for Pepe the Frog. So this is the idea that in memes there is some kind of magic and some are initiate to more knowledge. This is a parody of religion. This esotericism is more or less a parody of Hitleric cult, but true, obscure, and humorous reference. Um, this is the last point. This is I'm going to the end of my presentation, and I will summary what I said. far-right classic iconography and far-right meme, they represent the far-right activist and represent the golden age. But the difference is the first one is taking it seriously, and the second one with humor and critical distance. That don't mean they are not sincere. They are, of course, but they are in a different approach with this image and this self-representation. The aesthetic is not the same. The aesthetic of the identitarian was really polished. Then the memes are trying to be raw. And the last point is the far-right iconography is collective. There's the iconography and the specific organization. Then the far right, it's still, the far right men are still collective, of course, because it's related to an ideology, but it's allow the activists to distinguish themselves. And so there is more, for them, we can say, liberty in the meme than in the classic iconography of their organization. So I will finish with this compass who summary all the things I've said. There is, in a hand, loyalty to collective aesthetic. In the other hand, a desire for individuation. There is an heroization, with opposed to self-derision, sorry, an intellectual point aim to distinguish themselves through intellectual reference, and the other aim to prove they are the stronger, the more violent. So two type of capital who are tied to capitalism too, cultural and warrior. This is the warrior capital is a concept from the French sociologist Thomas Sauvadet. And the last opposition is between popular appeal, popular culture, and sophisticated culture, with the aim to show the more sophisticated and obscure reference as possible. So this was my conference. I hope you enjoyed it. I can, of course, develop if you have some question, and thank you for enjoying it. You can, this is some advertisement to my books if you are interested in.